Hello. Thank you for having me. And before I start, I just want to caveat this with I'm not a designer. And a few lovely, beautiful, creative people have started following me on Instagram since I was announced doing this talk. And I've got real imposter syndrome, and my slides are ugly. So please don't judge me on them. If any of you wants to volunteer to make my slides for me next time I do something like this, I would be more than grateful. But this is me. On social media, you might have seen me as Jane Chico Mendes, cook, or as HungryCity Hippy. I'm one of those annoying people with two names and two accounts. The Chico Mendes thing, there's a story behind that, but I'm not going to go into it now. If you want to know, come and ask me later. But it does have quite a fun story behind it. So when I typed in curiosity, when I was preparing for this talk, the first phrase that comes up when you pop it into Google is curiosity killed the cat. And that basically means don't ask too many questions because you might not like the answer and something bad might happen, which I think is crazy. And obviously we're a room full of people who are really embrace curiosity as a positive thing, but this is kind of the most common phrase that you hear around it. And actually I think asking questions is super important, both kind of personally, but also to make us understand the world that we live in. So the way that I've summarized it is curiosity is vital to understand the world around us as it opens doors and it helps us find our purpose, or that's what it's done for me anyway. So I'm going to break down my talk into two parts, how it's done wonders for me kind of in my career so far, but also how it's kind of helped me understand kind of the world that we live in a bit better. So this is me when I was little, and I looked a bit like Mowgli, and had crazy hair, and was repping the kind of HungryCity hippie sustainable mindset from a young age. This is me holding a "Don't Kill for Fur" sign that I'd made, and a drawing of a lion, which is very questionable. And when I was young, I was super curious. I remember my mum telling me a story about going to the garage with me, and she was trying to, we didn't have much money as a family when we were young, so it was a really stressful time for her because the car had broken. And she was trying to have this serious conversation with the mechanic in the garage. And I was going, "What's that? How does that work? Why is that there? What do you do with that?" And she just went, "Shut up, will you?" And the guy in the garage looked really shocked and told her off for kind of chastising me for asking questions, because obviously in kids you want them to be curious. And she was like, "You don't have to live with her every day." So yeah, I think it was pretty hard. But I did actually kind of lose that a bit in my kind of teen years, and I got more introverted. I mean, I've never been shy, but I kind of didn't want to put myself out there too much. I didn't know what to do when I finished A-levels, and I went and did English literature at Cardiff Uni, not because I had a really clear idea about what I wanted to do, but because I didn't ask any questions of myself, really. I didn't think about what I could potentially do when I left uni, and I just went for the easy option, and I knew I could do English literature well because I'd done well in uni, and so I just stayed on the same path. And the same reason I stayed in Cardiff, not that Cardiff isn't brilliant, I just thought, oh, well, I'll just do what I already know. And that was kind of me for the first kind of bit of my career. I just did what was safe and didn't really ask too many questions and wasn't very curious. And my university experience certainly was a bit of that. I didn't do any extracurricular activities. I didn't join any of the amazing societies that you can join. I didn't write for the paper. I did nothing except drink and do my exams, which is really sad. Which is why I then left uni and didn't know what I wanted to do. So I moved to London because the one thing that I had realized is maybe I'd missed out on an opportunity to experience more of the world. So I moved to London, and that's when things started to change a little bit, because I opened my eyes a little bit to kind of new things that were around me. But I did start off just working as a receptionist, and I did that for 2 years in London when I finished uni. And I remember one day one of the shipbrokers in the really corporate office that I worked in coming in, and he was kind of brimming with pride because his daughter had got into Cardiff University to do English literature, and this is after he'd been paying 20 grand a year of private tuition fees for her in private school. And I went, "Oh, I did English literature in Cardiff Uni." And he turned around and went, "What the hell are you doing on our reception desk then?" And I was like, oh. So then I kind of kicked myself up the arse a little bit, and I started asking more questions. So I started doing some research on what jobs I could do and what industries I could go into and what my skill set would match up with. And that's when I got my first PR job. This is a photo of me on the roof of John Lewis in Oxford Circus when I was working for my first PR agency, taken by a photographer called Jason Alden. He's a really great photographer. He does loads of like celeb and pressy shots now. And it was that first job in PR that opened me up to kind of working in more creative space and also working with bloggers. And again, I started to ask questions. How did you get started? How did you start writing a blog? How do you host it? How do you get invited to stuff? And it was another one of those kind of light bulb moments when I went, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So I started my blog. This is it in its first iteration, and it is gross. It's messy, and it's ugly, and it's not even the first iteration. I'm lying. The first one was so bad, I'm never showing you. I don't even know what that is. I mean, it's not a wonder of design now, but that's just hideous. But anyway, this was it in its first iteration, or second, and I just started writing stuff that I was interested in, writing about food and sustainability, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail in the second half of my talk. But it was great, and I felt like I had a bit of a creative outlet and something where I could say what I wanted to and not bore my friends in the pub with my opinions on things. And then just as I was kind of getting into a rhythm, I decided to quit my job and my times in London and go traveling for a little bit. And so I decided to keep a little travel blog while I was away, because I'd kind of gotten into the groove of blogging, but also because I was going to spend 12 weeks with my then boyfriend, now fiancé, hi Pete, and I thought I'd kill myself if I didn't have something to do for an hour a night to just take my head out of being 24/7 with one person. So I started writing this little travel blog, and I did that for the 12 weeks that we were away. In honesty, I did it because I thought my mum was going to be really worried about me while I was away, and she didn't read it at all. And I was really upset about that. And I'd call her and be like, have you seen where we are this week? And she'd go, oh, no, I haven't read it for a week. And I was like, you were terrified about me leaving before I went, and now you don't even bother reading it. But it was fun. And actually, it opened an amazing door for me, because while I was there in the last week, a job covering a 6-month sabbatical covering at Lonely Planet as a press officer came up, and I applied for it from a beach in Thailand, more as you do, and I got the job. So for 6 months I went and worked in-house at Lonely Planet, which was awesome. And when I went and spoke to them, I said, oh, you know, how come you chose me for the job? Did you have many other candidates? And they said, yeah, we had loads. And there was a guy actually who had much more experience than you, but we felt like you were a more of a team fit, and also you seemed to be much better traveled. And I was thinking, that's the first time I'd left Europe, but okay. But it was the blog that made me look like that, so it was great. And then after Lonely Planet, I did come back to Cardiff, and I joined Golly Slater, these lovely people down the front. They are in the office across the road, and it was the best thing I could have done, because it introduced me to loads of really fab creative people. It got me to understand kind of the connection between my blogging in my part-time and then the stuff that I did in work, and it gave me a really good grounding for meeting people in the city and getting to know Cardiff again, because it had been kind of the best part of 5 years. Then in my first kind of couple of months back in Cardiff, I ended up winning 2 Wales Blog Awards for HungryCity Hippy, which was amazing. I'd kind of seen that I'd been nominated, but didn't think much of it. It probably wasn't the best way to start a working relationship, because I was up against my then boss, Matt, in one of the categories, and I won. Sorry, Matt. Yeah, that was a bit awkward. But no, it was lush, and they were super supportive. Yeah, it was amazing. But amazing as it was, I left after 18 months, and I thought, I'm going to try this whole public sector thing, because it looks really cushy, and I want to see if I can have 35 days holiday and flexible hours, because that sounds great. So I went and worked at Cardiff Met. Again, it was really linked to my blogging. They wanted to set up a student blog, but they wanted it to be kind of really different from the stuff that they normally do on their websites. They wanted it to be really authentic and have an authentic voice. So we built a blog and a magazine. Took us ages to do it. We got a wedding photographer. I don't know if you know a photographer they're called O&C. They're traditionally wedding photographers. They take this really gorgeous, organic, grainy photography. But we got them to do all the photography of the blog so that it would look totally different from the Cardiff Met normal style. And I spent 18 months working on that and doing the associated content marketing for it. And it ended up winning an award at the CIPR Awards in 2016, which I was really proud of, because that's the first time they'd entered anything like that. As an in-house team rather than as an agency piece of work. So that was awesome. And then I left. There's a theme there. And I went back to Golly's, and I set up a new kind of team and a new discipline for a social media department that was more kind of specific. But this is another place where my interests and my hobbies have made me into something in my career. So I became the social media and blogging content-y specialist for the PR campaigns that we did there. But it's just because I was doing so much of that in my personal time, it had eked over into my career, which was awesome. And we did 18 months of great stuff for clients, got some really good results, and built the start of a social team there. And then I left. There's a theme. I get itchy feet. And my next job is actually for a company called Wriggle, and I started on Monday. So this week has been really, really stressful. But they are, I don't know, hands up how many of you have heard of Wriggle before? Oh, awesome. Oh my gosh, early adopters in this room. So it's awesome. It's an app that helps you discover independent places to eat and drink in Cardiff, Bristol, and Brighton. But obviously, I'm now going to be the Cardiff social media and content manager, so it's the content marketing role all over again. But obviously, I'm so into like food and stuff, it just makes sense. So I'm really excited to kind of have that, again, that work that reflects the stuff that I like doing in my spare time as well. But I guess the key thing that I wanted to take away was all of those jobs that I've had from the point that I started actually asking questions about things and being more curious. My career has been completely shaped by that, whereas when I stuck to what I knew and didn't really do that, I was a receptionist. So curiosity's definitely been amazing for me and helped me build a career that I really, really love. But it has also helped me to understand the world around me. So this question, this quote about it being something that shouldn't be encouraged by asking too many questions. I feel like this could almost be written by a brand manager of like a food and drink company who don't want you to know how they treat their animals, or a restaurant who tells you everything's locally sourced but really it's like from Poland. Like this is the kind of attitude that the food and drink industry relies on, so that we don't know the realities of how things are made. And actually, my argument is curiosity about food isn't a negative thing. It can lead to amazing things. So, for instance, I've been featured in The Guardian. I've been nominated for an eco-friendly award in the UK Blog Awards. I was invited to Westminster by the WWF and commended for the work on the blog, and then they stuck me in an advertising campaign as an Earth Hour heroine, which was great. So it's definitely a good thing. I don't know why that's down there and really tiny. I told you my slides were bad. But the kind of things that I ask questions about on the blog are things like farm animal welfare, ethical travel and ecotourism. How can we travel without it having a negative impact on the world? Are the things that say that they're eco and sustainable when you go away actually the case? You know, we've all seen the stories of Tiger Temple. They used to say they were a sanctuary, and actually they treated them like absolute dirt. How do we not be that guy when we go traveling? And the impact of our consumer lifestyles. And so an example of the kind of stuff that I write is hacks to help you go green. What's foodie greenwashing? So greenwashing is a term that applies to when a company uses marketing or spin to make them seem like they're being more eco-friendly than they are. An example is, or they detract attention from the ways that they're doing things badly and make you focus on other things. So for instance, after Blackfish came out and SeaWorld received loads of criticism for the way they treat their orcas and the fact that they have orcas in captivity at all, they did loads of stuff on how they use sustainable plastics and recyclables and refillables in their park, and I think they got Bindi Irwin, Steve Irwin's daughter, to front a campaign for them, and it was all kind of trying to divert attention away from the fact that they've got whales in a bathtub. Didn't work. Good. And then 6 easy ways to be a more eco-friendly traveller, and these kind of things, which I absolutely love. So being really specific about the places in Cardiff, so the businesses in Cardiff that are absolutely smashing it in terms of sustainable stuff, and concentrating on reducing food waste and just being awesome, because my blog does have a Cardiff focus. So on that note, in terms of things that I found out by being curious, I'm going to see how much you guys know. Don't worry if you don't get the right answers. I've got some prizes for people who do actually ask a question, and in the hope to bribe you not to just stare at me blankly. So how much UK fruit and veg do you think is wasted by farmers only? So before it even gets into the supply chain, before it even gets into your fridge and goes soggy and mouldy and then you put it in the food waste bin, how much fruit and veg do you think that farmers in the UK create doesn't even get taken off the farm and used? Anybody, give me an answer. You get to win 2 of these, and I'll explain what these are in a minute. Oh, it's not that much. It's still a bad number, though. It is. 37,000 tonnes doesn't even leave the farm, which is 16% of the UK's annual crop. And that's down to a few things. It's down to supermarket contracts, which are really, really restrictive and say we only want this much, and if you produce more, we're not going to buy it. So the secret is to shop not at supermarkets and to go more local and head into Cardiff Market or like farmers markets. And it's down to consumer buying habits. So it's because we want to have strawberries in winter and we want to have asparagus in, I don't know, when asparagus is not in season. That's a really bad thing to admit. But yeah, we need to be buying stuff when it's in season, and we need to be buying loads of it. We need to be like eating so much cauliflower when cauliflower's in season, and then forgetting about cauliflower for the rest of the year. Not eating everything all year round, because it's just making a mess of everything. And supermarkets are starting to listen. But Caroline, you answered that question, so you get one of these. This is a Cardiff company called Get Wonky. So they make fruit juices out of surplus fruit and veg that farmers aren't able to use in other ways. They're awesome. They're a pair of Cardiff Met graduates, and you can get these in independent businesses all over Cardiff, so look out for them and get them when you can. I'm going to give this to Caroline. You're welcome. These aren't running shoes. Okay, so how much of the Earth's surface do you think is used for meat production? So all of the land that we have, how much of it do you think is used in meat? Anyone? Give me an answer. 60%. Okay. You guys, you're so negative. It's less than that, but it's still bad. It's 26% just for livestock grazing. So a quarter of the Earth's surface is just for livestock to graze on. And, oh, where's my notes? Sorry. Okay. It's also 33% of our cropland is grown to feed those animals. So altogether, it's a massive chunk of our cropland, which we could be eating ourselves, and a quarter of the Earth's surface for grazing, which is insane. And the really depressing thing is, because of increasing incomes in the developing world, that's predicted to increase by 75% because they're now eating more meat in their diets because they're becoming more affluent. So we don't have the space. We've got to change something about it. And then finally, is it my final one? How many single-use coffee cups are used and discarded in the UK annually? As a guess. This is a really, really shocking figure. 5 million in the UK annually. See, now this is the one. 2.5 billion. It's insane. This is from the Telegraph. Oh, this is what I'm going to do afterwards, by the way. I'm going to write an article with citations for everything that I've put in here so you can see that I haven't just lied to you. On my blog, obviously, because I want the traffic. Just 1 in 400 of those 2.5 billion are recycled because it's a really confusing mix, not confusing, it's a really difficult mix of plastic and cardboard. You can't separate the two for recycling. You've won yourself a reusable coffee mug for your morning commute, by the way. Come and grab that for me afterwards. So yeah, and some places are starting to tackle it now by using biodegradable coffee cups, but they pose a whole plethora of problems in their own way anyway, because lots of people don't know that biodegradable doesn't mean it goes in the green recycling bin, it goes in the food waste bin because it needs to biodegrade with the food waste. So if people are putting it in the wrong bins, it's still not working. And also biodegradable is quite a loose term. Some of it biodegrades in 6 months, some of it biodegrades in 15 years. So really, we need to all be getting one of these. Please. Thank you. And then my last one is on the kind of greenwashing thing, and I've written a lot about this, and this is the kind of stuff that I always get a lot of engagement on the blog asking questions about, and it's kind of food labeling. So again, this is just something that I found out through being curious, through also working in communications. It's how kind of food labels are so deceptive, and there's a lot of this in this book, so whoever won that earlier, you'll get that in this by Dan Barber. So what do you think farm fresh means when you see that on some food? Yep, so it's guff, basically. It doesn't mean anything. And there's no legalities around it. There's no law that says you can't put that on there if it's this, that, and the other. It means absolutely nothing whatsoever. What about natural? What does that mean? Yep. Yep, and it's also guff. So I could literally write that on anything. It doesn't have to be natural. It can be completely man-made. There's no legal qualification for putting that on. It means absolutely nothing. So if you're buying things that say farm fresh and natural on them, you're mugging yourself off. What about Red Tractor Assured? That's an official proper label that's government certified. But do you know what that means in terms of what the animal experienced or kind of what that means in terms of what you're buying? Do you think it's like a welfare stamp? Do you think it means that they... She's got all the answers. Yes, it is. So Red Tractor Assured basically means that it's met the minimum UK standards of welfare and kind of husbandry and all the rest of it. So it basically just means we made this according to the current laws. This product is what it says it is, which is really depressing because I've been to multiple events where chefs or marketing people or whoever else have stood there and gone, well, Red Tractor is a sign of increased animal welfare and it means they have a much smoother ride to slaughter and, and they paint this idyllic picture and it's none of that. It does not mean any of those things. Whereas on the flip side, what does organic mean? Anyone? Yeah, so organic is basically, it's the best label you could look for if you're worried about animal welfare and the environment and all the rest of it, because it means that they have to have a certain amount of biodiversity on their farm. It means that the animals aren't treated with antibiotics as routine. There are still ways that people can cheat the labeling system and kind of tick a few boxes and it still meets organic, but they're maybe not doing other things right. But if you just want a label to look for, that's the one. But all of this stuff I don't feel like is in the consumer kind of, it's in the public domain, but I meet so many people who don't necessarily know this stuff. Not that girl. She knows everything. So to summarize, curiosity actually saved the cats. When I Googled it and wrote curiosity saved instead of killed, I got this lovely story about a team of researchers who came up with the cure for feline AIDS via curiosity. So that phrase about being a negative thing is clearly rubbish. But also, it can give you a career that you really love if you kind of go down that rabbit hole. And I think that was the phrase I used when I left Gollies. And they said, why are you leaving? Why don't you stay? And I said, I just feel really excited about the rigmarole and I've just got to go down the rabbit hole. And I think that's kind of what I'm going to do in my career from now on, is just find things that I'm curious about and just go after them, because it's worked for me so far. But also it can help us understand the things that we're being told that aren't true about the world around us and the impact that we're having, and maybe make us make more sustainable choices by asking questions about them. And there's a grumpy cat to finish with. And that is the end.